Hello and welcome. I'm Beth Cougler Blom, and this is Facilitating on Purpose. In this episode, I'm very pleased to be able to present a conversation I had with someone I know in the community that I live in Souk, British Columbia. This is a conversation with my connection, Linda Anderson. Linda is an artist, an educator, and writer with extensive experience teaching art in a wide range of community, school, and social services settings. Linda and I talk about how she became an artist, but we spend most of the time talking about her foray into teaching art, including teaching people that you know, pushing students outside the box, the importance of mentorship, and so much more. Here's my conversation with Linda M. Anderson. I hope you enjoy the show. So, Linda, I'm so glad to have this time with you. Thanks for coming and chatting with me about teaching art.
Well, I love to talk about art.
I thought maybe we could talk about you as an artist first. I'm going to assume that you didn't start out of the gate teaching art, but you were doing art maybe for a long time. Have you always been an artist?
Yes, I always did. Then, like usual, started out with cartoons, but I wanted art in high school, and but our high school didn't have art teachers. So by correspondence and with the help of going to a virtual art, well, it's not virtual because it wasn't virtual at that time. It all had to be done by slides and everything. But I did a complete commercial art course. So I came out with a commercial art certificate.
And when you say commercial art, I'm so new that what is commercial art? What is that?
Well, you're working for companies and you're making up logos and printing. And when I was out of school, I had, well, it was 2 years, but I had my children. So what I went to was painting signs. So it was more industrial signs, but I had to do, in those days, you had to look at the space you had to create, and then you just started lettering. I always had proper lettering brushes and that, but there was no drawing out. You by this time with my certificate, I could just visualize a space and start printing, and it would end up in the right space.
Yeah, you had that spatial awareness right from the get-go. Yeah.
Yes.
How did you know you had this skill? Like you just got positive reinforcement from people along the way? You just had this inner drive to do it?
I have had some terrific mentors through all of the years in everything I tried. And that's how I got into teaching because one of the workshops that I went to, down in Joseph, Oregon, Martha Sadak was actually one of the top painters at that time. We spent 7 days with her, but she asked everybody what their reason for the course was. And I just said that I was working in oils and I just wanted to immerse myself in it. And I said, and I do some teaching at home in my basement. And so she geared that whole 7 days every time she do it. So Linda, this is how I would teach this when she was teaching there was about 14 of us there. And so she started out to be one of my very first mentors. Yeah.
That's so nice. Can I ask you, are you doodling as we talk? I'm so curious.
Yeah, is that not good, eh?
No, it's interesting as an educator and around accessibility right now, because I want to say, does that help you have the conversation? Does it help you think you're moving a pen or something on a paper, I think, right?
Yes, I am. It's so that, but I mean, I don't have to. It just, I always do.
Yeah. I mean, that's such a natural kinesthetic thing to have an artist show up and do this in this. That's so interesting to me.
Oh yeah, because you can hear
I
that,
can
can't
hear
you?
it. Yeah. But it's
Yeah,
fascinating to me because, of course, with, learning more about neurodivergence these days, and I'm like, I want to welcome it. If that's great for you, I welcome it.
it is automatic.
Yeah. Yeah. That's, I mean, a true artist in action.
When
Absolutely.
I talk on the phone, I walk. I never stand still and sit on a phone. I always get up and walk.
Yeah. So you're a mover mentally and physically, it seems
But yeah,
like.
I guess so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you talked
Thank
about
God.
your mentor, your one mentor, and you have had other people show up along the way as mentors for you.
Yes, the Art Gallery Victoria had a show very early on when I first started entering my art pieces. And they had 12, I don't know, 10 or 12 categories. Well, I entered all categories, but I got one chosen and didn't realize that, oh, well, that was a good big deal. But all I wanted to do was know why the others weren't chosen. It's so weird after going to the art gallery and picking up the other ones because nothing was done by Zoom or video or anything. You had physically took paintings to be juried and picked them up. And so I went straight to the top gallery in Victoria, which went to ask the person in there how I go about finding out. Well, it was the owner of the gallery, and very calmly said, "Bring him in." And at that point, I was so naive. I didn't realize that people paid hundreds of dollars to have this kind of critique. And it was Leaf Hill Gallery owner down in Bastion Square. So my husband brought them all in. So he did me a full critique and told me what lessons and where to go next with what I was already working on.
And you didn't have any fear around doing that. You sort of boldly went and just asked for this for yourself.
I did, yeah. And so I was working in oils for quite a few years and was juried into a book for Artists of British Columbia. So we went to Vancouver for the opening of the show and the book. And of course, we all had to send slides. I had to send 12 slides in order to be juried in. And I did get a piece in. So I was part of the thing. But Harry Heine, who was the top watercolorist at that time in the Pacific Northwest, or probably the whole thing. And he got an invitation because he was a well-known artist at that time. So when it was time for us to go and get our pages, we had to autograph our pages in the book for all of the other artists. So I found Harry Heine. He was in watercolors and I wanted to learn watercolors. So I just asked him, I said, "Do you teach?" And again, this is pretty early in my lifetime and not realizing that, he's a little above that, maybe. But he just looked at me straight in the eye and he said, "Yeah, when the economy is bad," he says, "I teach. This is how I support my family." So I said, "Well, I'd love to learn." And then he says, "Well, give your name to my wife and she'll put you on a list." And so for 5 years, I followed him around every weekend or wherever he was. And the same thing happened. He really took notice that I wanted to learn.
It's such a testament to taking charge of your own learning, like you drove it.
Yeah. When I think back, and at the same time, he lived in Brentwood, and when I found out, at that point where he lived, and I said, "Oh, I'm in charge of workshops in Souk, and I have a bit of a budget. Do you think you could come and give us something at our meeting?" There again, it's probably if I'd have known more in the art world, I wouldn't have had the chutzpah or whatever you want to call it to go and ask. But anyways, he said, "Sure." And I guess I proudly said, "Oh, I have $75 a budget." And so he says, "Sure, we'll come out." He said, "I'll bring my daughter Karen, who is now one of the top watercolorists." And he did. And he came and talked to our group out here in Souk. And he's been a friend ever since.
That's so lovely. It's like not knowing otherwise, you just kind of did what you wanted to do and then people said yes. I love it.
They did,
Yeah.
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 Yeah. So, like I said, each time I've reached out to something or somebody, then it's turned into, a really good mentorship.
And you mentioned you started teaching art in your basement. What called you to make that switch from doing art to teaching art? How did that happen?
Well, that was real early because I was doing art, but very, very new at it, fine. And it was actually before I went to learn fine art because on PBS was a gentleman called Bill Alexander on the TV. Now, he was Bob Ross's teacher,
Okay. Yeah.
and Bob Ross and I took at the same time.
Really?
Although Bob Ross was in Alaska and I was in Souk. So we did it all by correspondence again. You sent slides, or all I did is at the time put the three kids either down for their nap. I had three little ones, or out on the sun deck, which was enclosed, and that was my hour to sit in front of the easel and paint. So I did that, and then I started painting that method in my basement to make extra money once the kids had gone to school. So
Was that the what became the Bob Ross style then? I mean, I know you just taught a course in
exactly.
Souk about that. So I have so many questions about this. Did you know Bob Ross then, or you were just both taking this instruction from his teacher? Yeah.
I did not know because he was in Alaska, but Bill Alexander went to Alaska too, and they got to know each other. So Bob Ross took over Bill Alexander's franchise.
Oh, okay. I see. Okay.
The magic of oil painting was all started by Bill Alexander, and you can still see him on YouTube. All of his PBS stuff is on YouTube.
Oh, okay. Okay, so you were painting in this what became the Bob Ross style, and then it somehow switched to you teaching. Did it start with that style or something else?
No, because Bill Alexander at that time put out a call to teachers. So I sent a slide, and I got chosen. There was 60 in the Victoria area. I was one of the ones that got chosen to go we went to a restaurant on Shelburne for the weekend, and he taught us how to do the Four Seasons. And then we went out and taught that.
Did he teach you how to teach, or did he
Yes.
just throw you to the wolves about the teaching
No,
aspect?
he taught us how to teach that method.
Okay, yeah.
So that's how Bob Ross got that method.
But there's like the method of art, like the method of painting, but then what's the teaching method? You know what I mean? Like for me as an instructional designer, it's always like there's the content, but there's also the how to teach piece. Like, did he give you both?
Yes, yeah. Yeah, he did. And that's what the whole thing was all. But that the idea was that anybody can paint, and you can paint a picture within an hour.
Well, and I saw that because you taught the Bob Ross course just a few weeks ago here in Souk, and I saw the pictures that those 3 or 4 participants came up with, and it was astounding. I mean, I think they were pretty fantastic artists, but one of them specifically said she'd never painted in that style. It was unbelievable. So something
Yeah,
works, definitely.
it got more people painting, and what? That's my son's 60, so that would be 50 years ago or more.
Yeah. So something about it helped people unlock.
But it was for everybody, and it was for housewives and anybody who felt like painting, because he didn't teach you about composition. He was a formal fine art teacher. This is Bill Alexander I'm talking about. So he knew, but he had designed this course for everybody so that anybody could paint. He believed that everybody should paint.
Yeah. And so I guess it's like a barrier that some art teachers might bring to the act of teaching that is hard for people. But it didn't happen in this way. Like something he did made it accessible to everybody.
Yeah, well, the special brushes he uses and the technique, and he brought in a different knife than had ever been done before, and it was all shaped differently. So if you use the materials that he gave you, or we did, and magic white and magic black, and I still have the original tins and the brushes.
It's been a while now. Absolutely. So when you started teaching, did it come easily? Did the students just naturally take up the practice of making art? Or did you find difficulties in that switch?
No, because I knew these ladies. I started out by knowing the people who came, and then they stayed with me for years. And then as I learned different things, I guess I probably knew pretty early that I did want to share it with other people. And also because I had so many good mentors, I wanted to be a good mentor. And then there's courses that I took that the teachers couldn't even answer the question, why? Just do this. Well, why am I doing that? And that's one of the things I pride myself on as a teacher, is that you can ask me any question, or if I say, use such and such a blue or red, why? Why is that particular thing? Why should I do that? I want people to be able to create art on their own And if you don't know the reason why, it doesn't stick with you.
Yeah. Okay. So here's the test. So my mother took painting years ago from the art teacher I had in elementary school, who was obviously a much more skilled artist than, teaching grade 4 art or whatever it was. But that woman, her name was May Leonard. I think she's still with us, although she's in Ontario. I don't see her, of course. But so she said to Mom that you need to put a little purple in every painting or something like that's what I remember. And so why do you agree with that? Why would that be?
Well, it depends on where it is.
Okay.
But yes, it's a color that'll go with everything, but it ends up to be, there's a discord. We pick out a color scheme and the colors that match that in certain levels of around the color wheel, say, but then there's always a discord that goes with that. So the purple is a discord that will go with just about any combination of color scheme around the color wheel.
Interesting. And so you need that discord in order to what? Make the painting come alive or something?
Yes, just a spark in interest. But it's also a cool color, but it's like a cerulean blue. They have what they call a chroma factor. So when you're dealing with a two-dimensional plane, like a piece of paper or a canvas, there's colors that pop towards you more. The basic thing is warm colors come forward or appear to come forward, and cool colors appear to recede. There's colors within that group that will pop ahead of the warm color because of what they call a chroma factor. So, and purple is one of those that will create a nice chroma factor, but it's a cool color, so it's on the shadow side.
Oh gosh, there's
Yeah.
so many. I know you've taught courses about color theory. That's a whole other area. We can't go down that rabbit hole in a way, but so fascinating. But I'll take it back to the kind of a misstep that other art teachers might make, as you're saying, is not answering the students' questions about why. And I can assume that's really frustrating for a student.
Yes, it can be, because they can make all the notes in the world. And the other thing that I learned from some other teachers is that you get, especially in a short course, you get 3/4 of the way or even 95% of the painting finished, and you don't know where to go for that last 5% because you've missed those notes. You've missed something in the discussion because you're busy painting or somebody's talking to you. I never teach without giving them full handouts of everything we're saying and why.
Okay. Yeah. So they have it. They maybe don't read it in the moment, but they've got it.
They've got it. Yes. Yeah, the whole thing.
So when you're teaching, I mean, you make me think that I could just see, I haven't actually taken an art class for years other than needle felting recently at Souk, which I was really terrible at. I must say, I won't go down that path either. But the social aspect of an art class, can that be advantageous to students? Is that a distraction for some? Like, what do you do about how much chatter kind of happens, and does it affect what they do or not?
Yes, well, that's part of facilitating the class. First, you need to know what everybody's expecting out of the class, and for on an individual basis. So I usually go around and people introduce themselves, and then tell me what they're looking for, because everybody goes to a class for a different reason. But I also stress the fact that they're learning from me as well as everybody else in the class. So if anybody has something they feel adds to the class, please feel free to say it. But be respectful of people's need also to concentrate on what they're doing. So there's just a little preamble there that goes along with it in a nice way, kind of.
Yeah, so you set the scene, right? Do you have to kind of tweak people a little bit as they go along if they're a bit too, like if they, we would call that like group agreements or group rules, right? You've kind of set the rules, but then you have to help people manage them or adhere to them, right? Like, do you bring it up in the moment saying, okay, we've got a little bit too much chatter going on, like let's have some quiet time or something? What do you do?
Yeah, no, I haven't really had to do that. Probably because I'm a very verbal teacher. And I go around, and then if I'll ask somebody, okay, so I think there's a couple others that actually should see this. Do you mind if I show it and talk about it? And they'll generally say, no, go for it, you know. But also before that, in the opening, I forgot, I always tell them, I said, please push yourself. I'm here to push you out of the box that you might be in. I said, because if you don't go outside the box, you're wasting your money.
Okay. Yeah. So take a risk, basically.
Yeah, so you've paid money for this class. So please, it's not a contest, you know, that kind of thing. But I ask them, and lots of times they have done something that I like or I think the rest of the class deserves to hear. And so there's a lot of teaching that goes on, not just do this, do that. It's here's I've been asked about this problem, and maybe she needs to do this and this. And a couple of you, I think, can learn from this as
Yeah.
well.
Kind of more the teachable moments. Hey, it's like emergent, whatever's coming up.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Yet you've come in with a plan because you've made the handout. It sounds like you have a step-by-step something that you're doing with any class, probably.
I do. Yes. Yeah.
What about the insecurities that people no doubt come in with? Do you get the I'm not an artist, I don't really know what I'm doing, and all, like throwing up all the barriers at the beginning?
Yes, that's the first thing you do. And I generally pointed out, I said, well, you know, you've already decided you couldn't do that. So what are you doing here?
Mm-hmm. Oh, so you challenge
I
them.
will challenge, I will challenge them. What can I do for you then?
I assume it's a gentle challenge. I mean, you're pushing the boundaries a little bit.
Yeah. And then there's one I have and it works for every class or everything. I worked for the mental health departments there, teaching people who had to make it through one week to the next week or one day to the next. And so they were always ready. I would go on a Wednesday, and I do this all the time, is how many of you say you can't draw? Well, you'd be surprised how many artists say they can't draw. They just paint. And I said, so what if I tell you in the next five minutes, I can teach you how to, to draw maybe 10 different people. And they say no. So I show them how to do that. And it's within there are 5 pencil strokes. And so I stop and they're all surprised. I said, so now you just said you couldn't draw. I said, and I've just proved that you can. So what else can you do that you don't think you can do?
That's so powerful. And it's not just you doing it, you get them to do it. So they have that visceral, I've just done it
Oh,
now.
yes. I did it with the seniors group, the lifelong learning. And, I'm sitting there with 20 people in front of me, all with paper and pencil. And it's the same thing. And these are all seniors, so they don't think they can do anything. And when you see the smile on their face afterwards, it's amazing.
Yeah, I know I just got chills in my legs around that because you could say to yourself, I mean, I'm 52. You could say to yourself when you're 50 or you're 60 or you're 70 or you're 80 and go, oh, I shouldn't do that because I'm this age. But it's so wrong.
That's right.
Yeah. So within the first 5 or 10 minutes, you've changed their mind about something.
Yeah. Yeah. And that group I took right from them saying they couldn't do anything to actually completing a watercolor painting. So, and they were all just tickled pink. And then I always come with if I'm teaching watercolors, I always come with different size mats and show their picture in a mat. And that shocks the heck out of them.
Yeah, because then it looks real, probably, right? It
Yes.
looks like a real painting that they've done. And it is.
And I get such a kick out of their faces when they actually can do something. Oh, and that's what that Bob Ross or the Bill Alexander does for you. People say, and they're just amazed at the painting they've done.
It's not just teaching technique, is it? I mean, there's something else you're teaching them about themselves. Like, can you put that into words, what that is?
I try to give them the confidence to try anything they choose to try through the art. Now you might not want to do this, but what if you decide to do that? And it's usually what I put in my own personal experience when I'm doing the watercolors. this is all true, is that I had trouble learning negative space, a negative shape, painting, seeing a positive, but painting the negative. And that's the only reason you can keep your lights in watercolors. That's one of the things you have to learn. And so I start that pretty early because when I was doing it, the Harry Heine, I was taking one of his daughter's classes and we were doing, and I picked to do the lacy painting there and of flowers in a field. Well, you had to do negative shape. And I'm thinking I'm doing it. And Karen comes around and looks at it and she says, Linda, you need to see the positive, but paint the negative. And she tries to explain it to me. Well, her dad comes along and he boots me out of my chair. You know, he just kind of puts his butt and scoots me off. And then he sits down and in one little corner, he did a Queen Anne's lace and some grass, all negative shape. And he says that, okay, now just keep that and look at that space. So I went on painting and going along, and Karen comes along and she behind and she says, oh, Linda, you finally got it. And she points to that spot, and it was right where her dad
Like, well, it was his. Yeah.
painted. And I had gone on and painted positive space. I didn't. So it took a lot of years.
Yeah. Well, you share stories like that and go, yeah, it was difficult for me to do some of this stuff too. And here's the story. Yeah. Okay. I just
Exactly.
want to
Yeah.
clarify for the people who aren't artists, because I want to make sure I understand that too. So let's say we're painting a watercolor, painting negative space is like allowing just the white or the cream of the paper to show through, like not painting that
Yes.
part, but painting around it. Is that what it is? Okay.
Yes,
Just
or
want to make
even
sure.
if you've colored it with something like the Queen Anne's lace is white or pale yellows and stuff like that around the edges, but you paint what's behind it. And some of the first things you start off with in school when you're learning this, which I had to do in the commercial art section, is that, and I never did get it even that early, is a chair. Draw a chair, but only paint the space, or only black out the space between. Don't paint the chair, paint the space between. There's just little squares and stuff. That's a very simple shape to do. So maybe most people do that.
You've worked with all sorts of different groups, I think, teaching them how to paint or just, draw or whatever it is. Do you approach all of those different groups in the same way, or do you do something differently?
Well, I spent a lot of years still do volunteering for the CNIB, the Institute for the Blind. I started that again when my kids were really little and I had a station wagon. So I started just transporting them from their apartments to the clubhouse where they would have their tea. And then I started working with them in the classes, or they did a lot of beading and all the craft class. But then afterwards, I went on to teaching them as they were artists before, but they were losing their eyesight through macular. And so at each different stage of their disease, we would devise a way to keep them going and keep them painting. And I did that with a lot. That was when I was in Soyuz and Princeton, because there was a lot of the people there that actually had eyesight problems.
How did you know how to do that? I mean, did you, again, just kind of throw yourself in and think, well, I'm going to figure out how to do this? Or
I
did
don't know,
you?
my brain told like, with the watercolor, well, no, most of them weren't watercolors. There was one that was watercolors, but the others were oils. Or I switched them there again. You have to switch the people from turpentines to vegetable oil to paint with, because no smell or anything like that. But anyhow, what the first thing we did would be to put paint in, at that point, baby food jars, because we didn't have all these different kinds of plastic containers in those days. We had baby food
Yeah,
jars or small
I
jars,
remember those. Yeah.
and braille the lids, just with a poke and braille the lids so that, and then we got so that they were put in a box that had divisions in, and they had to go back in the same spot that they were in, and they're good about that. As they lose their sight, or even the totally blind, their systems takes over. They're very organized. And so we did that. And then there was one there that so that if once they got so they couldn't see a lot, they would paint over themselves. So I took a piece of doweling and we notched a large notch on the one end that they could put on the end of their paper or whatever, their canvas, and then notched the thing all the way up so they could feel the notches and move their brush and paint thing. And of course, they went more from detail into abstract or larger brush strokes.
And they're seeing it in their mind's eye, basically. I mean, some would have low vision,
Exactly.
so they could see a little bit or up close, but then some were completely
Yes,
blind.
and they were painters before. And the watercolorist, what we did was we poured color on a full sheet of watercolor paper. And as long as you don't brush, it'll mingle and make every color that you want in the color wheel, some muted, some cool, whatever. So we would do that first. And then again, they didn't have tinted misket or masking thing. They had white. So we would tint that so that they could just barely see the change, the difference. They have a lot of, even as they are classed to be totally blind, they see a lot of values. That's the last thing. They lose color long before they lose values, which is another thing I taught the seniors. And so it's a matter of working so that she would put this stuff on and then take a credit card and take off what she didn't want. She could see a negative shape or a positive shape. And that way the credit card scratched off would do the positive shape, but the colors would come through. She made some of the most intricate things like Japanese women having tea or funny animals lay over a thing. And she was amazing, that one. They are amazing. People adjust.
And it feels like you would have to be open to learning so much from your students, basically, because I mean, you didn't know everything about having macular degeneration, I'm sure, and just listen and learn to what they could do, what they needed.
Exactly. Yeah. And one lady who used to live in Machosen there, was losing her sight when I met her. And I asked her if I could come and talk to her because I had already had this and we didn't know each other. But she wouldn't even go in her studio the day she finally said I could come for tea. And I did, and we just sat and talked about it. So it took 3 visits before she would let me in her studio. But she's a potter. So she wasn't particularly an artist there, but I looked it up on the internet and there were lots of blind potters. So, and that was at the early stages of the computer. But anyways, so I went to her and when she was open to it after a couple of visits, I said, well, come on, let's sit down at your wheel. And I said, what do you see? And she says, well, I see you standing over there and I'm standing off to the side of her. And so there I knew where her vision was. And so I had a friend make up 2 mirrors from Walmart and he put them on stands and rollers and he put them so that they swiveled inside the frame for me. And so I gave her that and she sat at her wheel and we positioned these. She got 2 of them, one on either side of her. And when she could position these mirrors so she could actually see the wheel.
Wow, that's so cool.
And so she got back to doing her ceramics. She did her ceramics there for another 5 years, or ceramics or pottery, and doing plates and everything because she could see the wheel to what she was doing.
And probably had to learn through new sort of tactile ways that she hadn't relied on maybe as much before or something too. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And we did the same thing by the time we had these label makers. So we went through every one of her chemicals because she made all her own glazes and brailled them and reorganized her things so she could get another 5 years out of doing it. And so that's kind of neat too.
There's a lot of ingenuity in that, I think, right? I mean, you weren't just following some book about how to help someone who's losing their vision keep their pottery skills. Like you're working with them, you're coming up with ideas, and it's so much beyond the teaching of art, right? Like there's this creativity in how this all happens to enable this.
Yeah, problem solving, I guess.
Yeah.
But because I had lots of years dealing with the blind people, and they don't care if you call them blind. I don't know if you want to take this out of your tape.
No, I think it's the same. People might say visually impaired, they might say blind, they might say whatever they want, right?
They
Yeah.
didn't care.
Yeah.
Yeah, the actual people don't
Yeah.
care. But they tell you just to quit worrying about what you say. At least that's what I learned from them. One of the first girls, Bonnie, her name was, that I was assigned to, and she said, Linda, don't worry about it. She said, just say what's on your mind. She says, and because I would say, well, turn around and say, oh, did you see this? And then I said, oh, damn, and she'd say, forget that. She
We've all
says.
been there and gone, oh my
So,
gosh, what did I just say? And they're like, don't worry about it. Yeah.
yeah, so they taught me, if they're out talking to me, they're accepting what they are and what limitations they have. So they're not worried if I screw up or say what the wrong things. I didn't have to be embarrassed about it. So later on, and this was very early in my work with the CNIB. So I knew how to problem solve because I knew how to ask the right questions and not be worried about the questions I was asking.
Yeah. Sort of that honest relationship when you can just say whatever and not have that worry and fear around the communication. You can go
Yeah,
places with
yeah.
that. Yeah.
I think we've lost a bit of that with everybody so worried.
A little bit. Like there's a time and a place, but then there's also like it can impede us as well, for sure,
Yeah.
in how to just get whatever it is we're trying to do done. I think. Yeah. Now, you told me recently you were helping someone learn painting, I think it is, who is in hospice. That was just astounding to me. And what a beautiful gift you're giving to this person. But I'm assuming it's mutual too. Like, can you talk a
It
little bit about
is.
that?
That's a tough one.
Yeah.
Yeah, Judy, his wife, I didn't know them, but he got my email off my website, and she emailed me, said that her husband was palliative, and he had always wanted to do watercolors and never did. And would I come and teach him how to do watercolors? So I said yes. So then I said, of course. So then the next email right after with that, well, if it doesn't, depending on the cost, she says, I would like to take them with him. And I said, there is no cost because, I had so many good mentors in my life and I wouldn't do that anyhow. But so anyways, I got to meet them. And yes, it's the most humbling thing because he was such a nice man. He was so eager. By this time, the first time he didn't need to be strapped in his chair, but the second time, and as the 2 months went by, he got worse and worse, but he was determined. But the last day was Friday, and he had to finish a painting. He was determined because he had picked Maid to do, and that was on the following Tuesday. So I had asked him a couple of times. I said, are you okay? Do you want to have a break? And he says, no. He says, there is no tomorrow.
Literally.
And
Yeah.
yeah, and then his wife, Judy, said, she says, you have given us a great gift, because she says we had at least 2-3 hours that we were together doing something, but it wasn't about his illness.
Yeah. Oh, that's so meaningful because so much could be about that. And then they were just have a normal time with you, a normal life kind of thing.
Yeah, and it was really good. So, but I told them the same thing. I said, well, it's such a privilege to be able to do that for somebody. I get more out of mentoring than the people probably get from me, because it's just, I don't know. It's not only payback; it's just volunteering or helping somebody is it's a great thing. But yeah, David kind of put a cap on it for me.
It's more than a job, it's like a calling, right? It's just being a
Yes.
person in the world and sharing your gifts and I
Yeah.
don't know, learning other people's gifts. It's not just teaching in that
No.
sense. Yeah. So beautiful.
Yeah, it was a great experience.
Yeah. What's, hopeful for you in the years to come? What do you hope other people who teach art can take from you? Like what should we be doing if we're trying to teach art or trying to teach creativity in the world these days?
Yeah, and that's a tough one. That is a tough one. One of the things that has come up with recently is last fall I was asked by the Legion to paint a mural because I do paint murals and have done quite a few of them. But I physically couldn't do that now. But I said I would bring a group of people together, artists together, and we would do that. And so, which is what we've been doing. A medic kneeling down just in the field and blowing, instead of blowing bubbles in the wind, it's blowing poppies in the wind. It goes all across the bottom of this mural. That discussion has been in the forefront for the last week or 2 weeks.
Yeah. What does the world
Dealing with
need
this
right now in this
right
very
now,
specific
and
mural that you're working on?
yeah,
Yeah.
some people just want to turn it back into community, but they all agreed on the poppies, so that's what we're really happy for, that they want to spread peace through the world, and it's the idea of that. And a poppy, of course, is one of their symbols.
It's so wonderful that you've been so involved. I know I'm a recent, transplant to this community just the last 10 years. I have a feeling you've been here quite a few more years longer than I, but thank you so much for all you're doing here in our
Thank you.
community.
I grew up here.
You did? Yeah.
I'm an original.
You're an original. Oh, gee. Sook. Thank you so much. I just could keep talking to you all day. I mean, there's so many more things that you could have shared about your life and your work and teaching art, but thank you so much for sharing all this with me and everyone who's listening today.
Oh, thanks for having me. It's been great. Yeah. Yeah, I'm old. I'll be 83 in a couple of weeks.
Oh, well, happy early birthday and enjoy your time.
Okay.
Thanks, Linda.
Thank you.
Well, it was such a pleasure to talk with Linda and hear about some of the things she's done in her long career of being an artist and a teacher of art. I appreciated so many things about what she brought to our conversation and what she told me about her approach and her philosophies around teaching art. Some things that are still resonating with me from the conversation are how she talked about allowing her students to ask the question why. That it's so important to be able to, as an art teacher, respond to that question and clear up some of those why questions for people who are learning art. I also appreciated hearing about some of the situations in which she teaches art, including the last example that we talked about around the person who was in hospice and she was teaching art to that person and their wife. And it just helps remind me and hopefully all of us that teaching art and teaching anything really doesn't have to just happen in the classroom, does it? It can happen in one-to-one moments, 1 to 2 moments, just moments here and there in community with the people that we know and that we appreciate. So I appreciate Linda so much for coming and sharing so much of what she's done in her life. I know there's so much more that she could have talked about, and I'm intrigued to have those conversations myself as I get to know her a little bit more in our community, but I so value what she was able to bring to our conversation today. Coming up on the podcast, I chat with Erica Barnhart. She's a professor at the University of Washington, where she serves as faculty director of the Executive Leadership Program at the Evans School of Public Policy and Governance. And she's also the founder of Klaxon, a company that helps clients communicate with clarity and confidence. Although Erica cares about all types of words, and I've known her for a long time, and I can say that that's true, the ones Erica cares about most these days are the ones we say to ourselves. Erica and I in the next episode are going to be talking about facilitating conversations with ourselves. I hope you join us next time for that episode. Thank you so much for listening. You can find the show notes at facilitatingonpurpose.ca. Feel free to reach out to me about any episode to share feedback, and please do share it with a friend or a colleague who you think might enjoy it too. This particular episode about teaching art might be fantastic to send to anybody you know who has just fallen into the world of teaching, like maybe some community art teachers do, or other folks who are great at what they do, maybe something creative, maybe other types of knowledge or content areas, and all of a sudden someone asks them to teach something and they're not quite sure how to do it, but they figure it out as they go along. Particularly if you know art teachers, please share it with them. I would really appreciate that support. Thank you very much. Thank you so much again to Mary Chan, as I always say in every episode, for her fantastic editing support for the podcast, and see you all next time. Thanks for listening.